Hello, we're Jerry and Kathy Baker, pastors at Metro Church. We want to thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. Metro Church is a dynamic, multicultural family church with a vision and a heart for our community. We're followers of Jesus from diverse backgrounds, colors, and cultures who are joined together as one in the commonality of Jesus Christ as Savior.
We live in an increasingly confusing world, a world where sometimes there are more questions than answers. Have you ever asked yourself, is there more to life? What will happen after I die? Am I really a good person? What about religion and spirituality? Is Jesus real or just a fable? My guess is that all of us have asked that at one time or another.
Well, let me tell you right now, there's good news. You don't have to guess. At Metro Church, you can discover what God and the Bible, His Word, has to say on this and many other questions about life. See, at Metro Church, you will feel genuine love and hear a message that's always uplifting and inspiring. You don't have to settle for church as a religious obligation, but rather as a gathering of Jesus followers in the path of life who gather to celebrate the goodness of God.
Start each week off right, honoring God. There are a lot of things pushing us down, but at Metro Church, we are going to lift you up. You'll always be challenged, inspired, and ready for a new week. We're looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
So for more information, visit our webpage at www.metrochurch.ws. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. God bless you.
I'm Dr. Kathy Baker, and I am just so glad that you're here today. We are a program that is reaching out with empowerment, encouragement, and enlightenment. And we want to give people the tools that they need, wisdom that they need for life today. Life is never like it's ever been before. It's tough, but you're not alone. And we have everybody that's been on this series, this portion of God Forgiveness, you've heard some incredible testimonies. And so today, it's going to be like that, but we're going to have a little bit of a twist today. So how many of you like for people to mix things up? Sometimes it causes things to be exciting, right? So today we're going to do this, and so y'all pray for me. It's going to be fun because I'm going to have to let go of the reins, and my guests are going to actually talk to me and do the interview on me. So sit back, relax. We're going to have fun. We always have fun around here. All right, ready? Here we go.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Yes, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I guess.
Turning it on you today.
Okay.
So that's wonderful. So, Dr. Baker, I've read your story, and actually I've had the privilege of hearing you tell your testimony a couple times. It was published in Power for Living in November 2015. It's an incredible story. In fact, your story, it deeply touched me, but your story is a story that you might see on a movie, a movie. I mean, on Lifetime. Yes, it's one of those movies. But this is not a movie. No. This is your real life. And so, Dr. Baker, I just want to know if you would just share a little bit about your background first with us, and then kind of go into a situation that happened when you were a young woman living in Texas.
Okay. All right. Well, I was raised in, I had a perfect life. I had a good life. I was sharing with Karen this week, I've lived a very privileged life. My dad was a very successful businessman here in the city. He had a 7th grade education, and but yet God promoted him, because when God gets a hold of you and He's got a plan for you, He'll promote you. Yes. And so He did, and he built one of the largest oil industry companies that are still here in this area today. And we moved into the city. We had a perfect family until something happened. And I always like that statement when people say something happened, because in my life, life was good until something happened. And it was something that I had no control over, and that was that my mother died when I was 9. My mother's death was devastating to me. She wasn't sick. She was sick for 3 days, and she died. And so that was something that I had no control over, but it happened. And then my dad remarried, and when I was 12. And so that was not an exciting moment because that something happened. I couldn't stop my dad, but the thing about it was my stepmother hated me. And there was nothing I could do. I tried for a long time to fix that so she would like me. I did everything that she asked, but there was a whole backstory to that. So then something happened that I could not stop, and that was that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And I was a young lady in college trying to survive. So I had buried my mom when I was 9. I buried my dad when I was 19. And 6 weeks after my father died, my oldest brother died.
Wow, a lot of tragedy.
A lot of tragedy, a lot of sadness.
Yes.
And again, I didn't have a mother there to explain, to talk to. Jesus and I did a lot of talking, okay? And Jesus does talk.
Yes,
so if you ever think, well, I don't know. Yeah, he does communicate with us. So I thought this is the last place I want to grow. I want to finish and build my career. I don't want to do it in New Orleans. There's too much pain here. My entire family was in West Lawn Cemetery on the West Bank, and I didn't want to have to go visit them on Sundays, okay?
Right.
So I just wanted to start fresh. So I ended up going to Houston, taking this job. It was awesome. And I was excited. I had the world in front of me. I mean, I was, 20 years old, just gangbusters, okay? And I got invited out for dinner. And in a situation that was very tragic, I was raped by a superior in the company that I was working in. He was the head of sales in that company, and I was raped that night. And it was, you have to understand, I was still a virgin. I was the good girl. I had crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's, and I had drank alcohol one time when I was in college at that point, and it didn't like the way it made me feel. So I didn't have any vices going on in my life except that I was obsessive about studying and working and becoming and trying to serve God with my whole heart. I was doing everything right, and I just couldn't understand how this could happen to me.
Absolutely.
And that night, I got back to my apartment, and I actually got a cab driver. I didn't have my shoes on, and I didn't have any of my things. I didn't have any money with me because I actually ran away, broke away from the rape. And I went into a convenience store, and I was sobbing, and he could see the scratches, and I was holding my clothes on to me that had been torn off of me. And the guy at the convenience store said, "Let me call the police. I need to call the police." And I said, "No, please, whatever you do, don't do that. Just get me a cab." And finally, he did do that very thing. And the cab driver came, and I don't know what discussion there was between the manager of that store and that cab driver that day, but he drove me to my house, and when we got to the apartment that I was living in, he said, "Do you have a key to get in?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I do have a hidden key." And he said, "Well, when you get to your apartment and you get in the door, just turn the lights on and off for me so I'll know that you're in the door and that you're safe." And he said, "I want you to know," and he looked around at me as I was seated in the back of the cab, and he said, "I am not going to follow you. So you can be peaceful, you can be at rest, but you need to call someone." So that night I got into my apartment, and I climbed in a tub of water in my clothes. I had all my clothes on, and I just turned on the water in the tub and sat down in the tub because I felt so violated and so dirty and so abused and so used.
Right.
And so that was a real.
That's a major
shift,
yes.
a major event.
Yes.
And
at such a young age.
at a young age, and no one's there.
Yeah.
There's no one there.
No
Right.
mom.
No mom,
No
no dad,
dad.
no brother. You know, no one there.
Feeling like you have no one to turn to.
No one to turn to. And
But God.
but God.
But
Yeah,
God.
but God.
Yes.
But God. And
So did you feel like God was there with you?
not at that moment.
Not at that moment.
No, I have to be honest with you. I didn't feel anybody was there with me but me.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wasn't, you know, the man knew where I lived. So, but I was never fearful that he was going to come after me.
Right.
It wasn't that type of thing. But I was in shock, basically. I was just sitting there, and every time the water would get cold in the tub, I would drain the water and put hot water back in the tub. And I did that all night until the sun came up the next morning, and I got up out of the water, and I went and rolled up in my bedspread on my bed, completely wet, and slept through, just went into that deep, deep, deep sleep. And, but my dad had raised me to have such a great work ethic. And, you know, we go back to the things that we know.
Yes.
We reach for what we know
Right.
in those moments of horror. And so I knew that I had to get up the next day and get all my clothes ready for the week of work that I had ahead of me. And I needed to prepare all my meals, and I needed to get my ducks in a row, so to say. I was going to work through it. And as I had coped with the loss of my parents, I coped with studying and being in school. I coped, again, with this issue by working.
So it sounds like you may have become a little bit of an overachiever trying to get over this pain.
Absolutely.
And lots of us do that, right?
Lots of us do it, especially women. Especially women. We do that a lot. We think we can fill that place that has been left in us by the pain. And but you know, there were some things that happened that I just couldn't do anything about. I couldn't change. I fought that night when I was being raped. I fought and I resisted and I cried and I screamed, but I wasn't heard. And so maybe that's why I didn't cry out when I'm sitting in the tub to God. I was just quiet
Right.
and still. So I got up, went to work the next day, and this is the incredible part, is that I had to get up and go to the same place that we both worked
That's the tough part.
and see this person day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out. And I finally confided in the lady that was supervising me, the CPA that I was being mentored under. I walked into her office one day and I said, I just can't seem to get, I must be eating something that's bad. I don't feel good. I don't know what's going on. And I'll never forget her looking up from her desk. She was writing, and she looked up from her desk and looked at me square in the eyes with these crystal blue eyes. She had these crystal blue eyes. And she said, well, could you be pregnant?
Oh my goodness.
Well, I didn't even know that morning sickness was a symptom of being pregnant. And literally, I can remember at that moment, the blood running out of, just feeling like everything ran out of me at that point. How could this be?
Right.
How?
Yeah.
And I knew when she said it that I was. I mean, I didn't need to go to a doctor to figure it out. I knew when she said it
Yeah.
that she was right on target.
Inner intuition.
One of the things that I'm hearing, and I have been your friend for a long time, Dr. Baker, so I've heard your story, but it amazes me at the tenacity and the courage that you can draw from places deep within you that you didn't even know you had.
Yes.
And at 20 years old, to be able to still understand somewhere that even though you thought you did everything right, you know, I've been one of the good girls.
Right.
You know, I thought I did everything right. Why is this happening to me? But somewhere, still deep down, you knew that God somehow was going to make a way for you in this.
That was in the back of my mind. That was in the back of my
Way
mind.
in the back of your mind.
Way in the back of my mind. And thank God my parents sowed that
That
into
into
me. They so diligently. That's why I tell parents, take your kids to church.
Yeah.
Get them to church. I know they're going to fuss and say they don't like it.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Sometimes I fuss and don't like it as an adult now. Okay. But you've got to do. I mean, you have to go because you've got to be spiritually fed because it's in these moments of life.
Yes, that you need to draw from that well.
That's that root. That's that system. That's that upholding that God does.
Absolutely.
And
So what did you do? You find out that you're pregnant, and
oh well, that took me days to just even get my brain around that. And then this same person came to me and looked at me with these crystal blue eyes and said, "You need to go down to that clinic down the street and get this taken care of. You have your future ahead of you. You have every opportunity to become something that is just amazing, and you don't need to tell on the man that raped you because he's their golden goose, and if they're not going to get rid of him. You will be expendable."
right.
And so now this is the counsel of the world, okay? I mean, she's giving me the counsel of the world. And, everything that she said was absolutely right. That's exactly what would have happened.
Yep.
But God, okay? So I'm a young lady and I'm just listening because I'm alone.
Right.
And Satan really got a foothold in that area of my life because when we isolate ourselves, we end up in a dangerous place. And so she told me, she said, "Well, look, I'm going to give you the money." I called them and I found out what it's going to cost for you to have this done. And you need to take this, you need to go there on Saturday, and here's the money, and you need to take care of this.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And so she gave me a handful of 20s. I'll never forget it. It was $240. And I had 20s in my hand, round up like a kid going to a store to buy candy, okay? I mean, I walked out with that money in my hand. And this Saturday morning, I got up and I went to that clinic. And that was right at the time that clinics were opening up all over the United States because there was now a place for them to do that. And they were accepted. They were no longer doing abortions in alleys with coat hangers, if you're, in that tragic way. It didn't have to be dealt with that way. So I went in and I sat down in the clinic. And I was sitting there and I was vibrating because I vibrate when I get nervous. Do you vibrate?
Yes.
Your legs are bouncing. And I was vibrating. And this lady came and sat next to me and tapped me on the leg. And she stopped my leg she said, "I know you're nervous." She said, "But, it's okay. It's going to be all right. I've had 5 of these done and it's all going to be fine."
Wow.
And
Wow. The world's wisdom.
Yeah.
the world's wisdom.
how
But
sad.
it's so sad because the reality is, ladies, I didn't even know what an abortion was.
Right.
I didn't understand it. Nobody was talking to us about that there was this baby in me. Nobody,
A real life.
a real life
yes.
inside of me. And I was so caught up in the event that the fruit of that was not connecting with me.
Yes.
So when she did that, I sprung to my feet and I ran out the door, grabbed my purse, ran out the door, got in my car, and I sat inside of my white Buick. I had a white Buick. It's funny how you remember certain things,
Yes,
okay?
vehicles.
And I sat in that car, and I remember sitting there and just snot and tears everywhere, and I'm screaming to God, okay? I'm crying out, like Mary said earlier about crying out to God. I was crying out to God, and I was pounding my fist on the steering wheel, going, "You're going to take the next 9 months of my life." And this man walked in front of me in the car, looked at me like, "Are you okay?" Fast forwarding, I did spend the next 9 months and growing
And more than one way.
in more than one way. That's right. That was right. I tell you, I grew more than one way. And one day I was staying with a couple in Oklahoma City, and I was waiting for you have to understand, when they would take me to the OBGYN, and they would take me through the back door, because I was a pregnant woman that wasn't married, and we're talking back in
Back in the day.
1970, in that time, in 1975, it was not acceptable. I was filled with shame, and it was being reinforced. And so I got there. One afternoon, I'm napping in my home there in Oklahoma City, and the place I was staying, and I woke up, and I was laying on the bed, and the baby moved.
Oh, wow.
And now I had felt the baby before. I mean, obviously you start feeling the baby early on, but I'm laying there, and I felt this move in my stomach, and I put my hands on top of my stomach as if to hold what was inside. And I always called it the baby. It was never my baby, it was the baby. And when I put my hands on my stomach, I heard the voice of God. And God spoke very, very clearly to me. And he said, "This is not your gift." And I knew at that moment that this baby was not my child, that this baby was someone else's gift.
Wow.
And I went, delivered, and right as I was giving birth, they gave me enough sedation to make me go to sleep, so I wouldn't see if I had a boy or a girl. That was part of that era. You weren't allowed to know
Right.
the
No bonding.
no bonding,
Yes.
no connection.
Right.
And I woke up in the hospital the next day, and they came in, and I signed the papers. And as I signed my name on the papers, they had a big black marker. And as I signed my name on the birth certificates, they took a black marker and they struck out my name. And I'll never forget how that affected me, because I had given my life to this. I had given it for the last 9 months, and here I was. It was just like all of hell was just mocking me, like, I'll show you, and scratching your name out. And so I called the walk that I took from the hospital that day to the car the longest walk I ever took. And I think it really was at that time. But the incredible part of it is that you can fast forward 30 years. And I'm running in my house one day in the afternoon. I have a wonderful husband, pastoring in a church, 2 amazing kids. My phone's ringing. I run in to grab the phone, and I answer it. And when I answer it, they ask me, it was Aunt B from Mayberry. Sounded just like her, just like her. And asked me, "Is this Kathleen?" And asked me my maiden name. And I said, "Well, yes, it was at one point, at one time. Who is this?" Well, this is the council in Oklahoma, and we have been commissioned to connect birth parents with their adopted children. And your son really wants to meet you.
Oh my goodness.
And I just erupted at that point, because I didn't know I had a son.
That's right. That's right.
All those
I
years.
didn't know all those years. I didn't know.
Not even something as simple as whether the baby was male or female.
There was no connection. So at that point, over a period of time, I finally came to the place that I knew I had to meet him. And I did.
Oh.
And he came to New Orleans with him and his wife, and he's a successful businessman in Oklahoma City. You've gotten to meet him, and
Yes.
he's the peach. He's my guy. He's a country bumpkin from Oklahoma. You'll know what I'm talking about if you're watching this, E. But I took him to Mother's Restaurant. If you're from New Orleans, you know what Mother's is, okay? And so I thought that was apropos for us to go to breakfast at
Yes,
Mother's, right?
absolutely.
All right. So we're sitting there, and I have a gift for him that I'm going to give him at the table, and I knew I had to say this to him, and I knew this. if I ever knew anything, I knew I had to tell him that he was in my heart every day.
Every day.
That I had left him in good hands. I knew that the people that were adopting him, I knew their background, I knew they were loving people, godly people, and he had had a wonderful life.
That's good.
I said, but I want you to understand that you were never out of my mind. And every day I wrote in my prayer journal, and I would put in the word in the column, B-A-B-E. And I would always make it lowercase, B-A-B-E, but the E was a capital E, and I would always circle the E several times. And because I thought if ever my kids ever found my journals, they would wonder why I put baby in all of my journals. And so at that point, when I'm explaining to him that I had prayed for him every day and that he was in my prayer journal, his wife stood up and walked away from the table and came back a few minutes later with tears just running down her face. And she said, you have no idea, do you? And I said, no, I really don't. Have I said something wrong? And she goes, no. She said, but his name is Eric, but he is known as E.
That is unbelievable.
His whole life,
Wow.
he's been called E.
As a Christian woman, as a woman full of wisdom, because of the life experiences that you've had, what would you say to women that have had similar experiences? Because this is horrendous stuff we're
Yes.
talking about. This is
horrible.
stuff that changes a life. This is the kind of stuff that you slit your wrist over.
That's right.
You know, and you end up in the emergency room or worse.
Right,
You know,
right.
so, as we're sitting here today, what would you like to share with women that have gone through that horrendous kind of treatment, but yet they do still get up every day? You know, so how do you do that? You know, in my own mind, I can't imagine.
Right.
In my own mind, I really can't imagine. But some things that I've been through in my own life, if it were not for God,
Right.
I don't know what I would have done.
There was a lot of time spent just crying and holding my Bible. And, you know, get away from people that want to abuse you in that way. Set up those boundaries. Don't find people that you know are godly people. You need someone to talk to that knows wisdom, that knows God's wisdom.
God's wisdom.
Not the wisdom of this world, because the wisdom of this world will say, that's just what you got to, you got to put up with all that.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, live with it. And, you don't. But you've got to find a counselor. You've got to find a confidant. You've got to find someone that you can open up to and allow them to pour in hope and promise.
Yes.
And it's only going to happen if you open the door for that. So I'm going to ask right now, if you need prayer, please text in. And somebody, if you're in a situation right now where you're being abused, please text in, and one of us will get back with you, and we will pray with you. We will listen to your story, and we want to be ambassadors of wisdom. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. And Wisdom Network Live is going to be, I believe, is going to be such a help to so many women and men. Anybody that wants to watch this show will be able to hear wisdom from all good ground, good place, good word, good seed. All right? So God bless you. And I just speak blessings over you today, and I ask that His hand rest upon you, and that you find shelter.
Yes.
Shelter in wisdom.
Yes.
God bless you.
Hello, we're Jerry and Kathy Baker, pastors at Metro Church. We want to thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. Metro Church is a dynamic, multicultural family church with a vision and a heart for our community. We're followers of Jesus from diverse backgrounds, colors, and cultures who are joined together as one in the commonality of Jesus Christ as Savior.
We live in an increasingly confusing world, a world where sometimes there are more questions than answers. Have you ever asked yourself, is there more to life? What will happen after I die? Am I really a good person? What about religion and spirituality? Is Jesus real or just a fable? My guess is that all of us have asked that at one time or another.
Well, let me tell you right now, there's good news. You don't have to guess. At Metro Church, you can discover what God and the Bible, His Word, has to say on this and many other questions about life. See, at Metro Church, you will feel genuine love and hear a message that's always uplifting and inspiring. You don't have to settle for church as a religious obligation, but rather as a gathering of Jesus followers in the path of life who gather to celebrate the goodness of God.
Start each week off right, honoring God. There are a lot of things pushing us down, but at Metro Church, we are going to lift you up. You'll always be challenged, inspired, and ready for a new week. We're looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
So for more information, visit our webpage at www.metrochurch.ws. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. God bless you.